Here we are in the Communications Steroids podcast. Once again, I'm Tim Gordon.
I'm Roger Pike.
Thanks for joining me, Roger.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
How was your trip down tonight? I noticed you got here a little earlier. I was on the line. I guess it was online with Tony Marino doing a webinar, and you were upstairs. I heard you sneak in about 15 minutes before.
I was hoping to catch a nap on the couch, and then I ran into a comic book and was lost.
And I was hoping it wasn't a burglar. Leaving the door unlocked in this neighborhood. Actually, it's okay. It's not a problem. So, anyway, here we are in Communication Steroids. And on our podcast tonight, we want to talk about when you get up in front of people, when you're communicating, what it takes to stay fresh. And it's a great idea, Roger. What do you mean by staying fresh?
Well, people often will have a great idea, and they'll start out strong, and then they will lapse. They will just die. I mean, they'll keep talking, but the interest level will wane over the course of the speech, over the course of the communication. Why is that?
Well, let's say, okay, you're scheduled for 20 minutes at a luncheon, or maybe 30 minutes, and you get 5 minutes into it, and people are like checking their Blackberries and looking at the watch and looking for the waiter for more coffee.
First 3 minutes are fabulous. The next 2 minutes are okay, and then you're gone.
But then all of a sudden you're checking your notes, and you don't have the oomph, you don't have the pizzazz. What's going on?
Well, you've lapsed into the meat of the matter, and you've suddenly forgotten that you're not just there to communicate an idea, you're also there to keep people interested in the idea that you're
and I think you hit the meat of the matter by saying that exact phrase, the meat of the matter, because when you get to the body of your speech, that's when you've got to be interesting.
That is exactly.
And you've got to have something compelling to say.
Right.
Now, it doesn't matter what your message is, or your topic, as long as you're A, passionate about it, B, you know what you're talking about, and C, you're delivering it in a way that interests people.
Well, you've written out an introduction, and you know that introduction is a grabber. And then after that, people are supposed to stay interested just because you have something interesting to say, but it doesn't always work that way. So there are ways that you can keep an audience interested over the course of your 20 minutes. One of them that I like is to keep making that emotional connection. In other words, don't be dry, don't be lifeless, don't be listless. Make an emotional connection. And
How would you make an emotional connection with your audience? What are some ways that you typically use?
Tell a personal story. Tell an anecdote that ties into the part of the message that you're relating at that time.
And it keeps them from being dry. But when you lapse into a story like you go, hey, I remember the time when I was 15 years old. You won't believe what happened to me.
Exactly.
And people will go, what?
What happened to you?
What happened to you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every novelist that I've ever talked to says a novel is the answer to the question, what happened next? I mean, the next page of a novel, the next line of a novel is the answer to the question, what happened next?
If you are turning pages and pages, and I read fiction at night before I go to bed, and I look at the clock and go, man, I got to turn this thing over, I got to turn the light off, and I got to get to sleep. But if it's a page turner, it's really hard. They're answering that question really well in their method of communication.
Right. So you want your audience to keep asking what happened next, and one of the ways to do that is to tell a personal story or anecdote. Now, you can use a story from an audience member, too. That'll work real name. I mean, what are the two most important words to any individual in the English language?
Here's some money.
Their name. Their name is the most important thing in the world. So you can use that too, but make sure you set it up in advance and you get permission if you're going to use a story from an audience.
Obviously, you're going to set that up ahead of time. What else, Roger?
Use the mind's eye. Paint word pictures. Be descriptive. Use loaded language. I mean, it's very, very important that you can use emotional, intense, descriptive language. For example,
and we were talking about this just before we sat down. What's some good examples? I think I wrote the phrase down about the baseball. Here, read that.
When you're watching a baseball game, the announcers don't ever say. You have never heard them say they propelled the ball using the bat approximately 400 feet until it left the field of play.
You don't hear that.
When have you ever heard that? No, you don't hear that. They say, he hit a dinger. He tore the cover off the ball. He launched one into the upper deck. He blasted a round tripper. He belted a bleacher feature. He went yard. I mean,
love that one. He went yard. He's going yard. Yeah. And you know exactly what they're talking about. They're using very descriptive language
to say he hit a homer,
and that pulls you in. So
exactly.
All right.
So be descriptive and use that kind of language. Use intense adjectives and adverbs because they really bring people into what you're trying to tell them. Then also keep centered on your value.
And that is your message. What is the message? We just talked about this. You got to know what your message is. You got to know it cold. You got to know how to deliver it, and you must make it interesting.
Don't stray far from it. Or if you do stray from it, if you do tell a story that its sole purpose is to keep you entertaining, and there's nothing wrong with that, just keep it short. And then get back to your value.
You made an allusion to an astronaut. If you're an astronaut up there talking to the audience, you better be talking about space, not haircuts.
Yeah.
And I said, well, unless it was a haircut in space, and then that relates.
Exactly. Precisely. And like I say, you can stray from the message, but keep your digressions short. Find out what your message is. Keep on your message. And then my next point is, be alive. Now, when we sat here talking, if nothing else, we're animated.
Yes, we are.
Animated and passionate. If you can see us, we're gesturing, we're beating on each other.
We're laughing, we're
carrying
smiling,
on.
we're involved in this, we're passionate about it. If you've ever seen a tape or seen Tony Robbins speak, and I had a chance to see him once, the guy is one of the most alive and passionate people on stage, and that is one reason, I believe, for his success. Not only that, because he has a really good message, and people really buy into that message, but if he were doing that message in a monotone, or he's up there being rather boring, it wouldn't go over.
Monotone.
The guy jumps around. He's 6'7". He's a dominating presence. He's a dominating physical presence, but that presence is very, very animated and very passionate.
Remember that monotone is the first 2/3 of the word monotonous.
We don't want to be monotonous.
We do not want to be monotonous. And I think that that's one of our great strengths as speakers, is that we're very animated, we're very alive. So do the same thing yourself. Be alive. Exude energy. The energy you bring to your communication will keep your audience focused and will keep them energetic. So be alive. Then know your audience. That's always important. We've said it on almost every podcast we've ever done, and there's a reason we say it a lot, because it means a lot.
You got to know who you're talking
audience.
to.
Know who you're talking to.
Know who's listening.
Then last but not least, as we've already gone over our 7 minutes, is avoid the pitfalls.
And some of those pitfalls are, Roger,
mumbling.
Oh,
mumbling
like
murders your mojo.
You don't know what you're doing. Oh,
mumbling murders the mojo. Don't do it. Don't monotone. Remember, monotone is short for monotonous.
What are you talking about?
Don't use crutch faces like.
like I remember when I first got into radio. Quick story. A guy that mentored me said, you need to tape your show, listen to it every day. Hardly anyone ever does. You will discover amazing things. And I found that I would use the same phrase almost every time I opened the microphone. And boy, did that cure me. Because when I heard myself saying, hey, it's Wednesday afternoon at 7:14 or whatever, I would go, ooh, okay, find a different way to say that. And so I think if you're aware of that, you will avoid those crutch phrases. And a lot of disc jockeys don't do this, by the way.
A lot of them don't, no.
Still, they've been in it for 20 years, and they're still saying the same thing every time they open the mic. Anyway.
Boy, it's a good thing their audience turns over every 2 hours.
Yeah. Anyway, about to wrap up. Anything else,
right.
Roger?
At all costs, don't offend. Well, unless offending people is the shtick, unless it's part of the plan.
Yeah, if you're Howard Stern or Don Imus, you can get away with that.
But if foul language is going to offend your audience, know your audience. If foul language is going to offend them, don't use foul language. Don't be misogynistic. Don't be racist. Don't offend. It cost Don Imus his job.
Yeah,
Racism cost him his job. So, again, make an emotional connection. Use the mind's eye. Paint word pictures. Use emotional language. Keep centered on the value you offer. Be alive. Exude energy. Know to your audience and avoid those pitfalls. Mumbling, monotone, and crutch phrases.
Thanks again, Roger. And this has been on Communication Steroids Podcast. Thank you for listening.